Hello, sir. My name is Jason Spires. I'm a current Stanford student, and I'm getting ready to start up the Libertarian chapter here on campus. Anybody wants to join, please find me. My question comes that I seen that this was supposed to be the moral defense to build the wall. And we can argue whether we need to secure our borders and stop immigrants from coming in, but is the question really about using eminent domain to take people's private property to build a wall, or is it about finding a way to sustain our border to stop people from being able to scale it? Like you said, Stanford has found a way to prevent intruders without a physical wall. Shouldn't the U.S. aspire to do just as good as Stanford is?
I take your question to be asking not a question about whether we need a wall, but what kind of a wall. And I'm using the term wall here metaphorically. You seem to agree. This reminds me a little bit, by the way, of Frost's poem Mending Wall. Because in Mending Wall, you've got a neighbor who's railing against his neighbor for building a wall, right? But while he's railing on the neighbor for building a wall, he never claims the right to go into his neighbor's property. He never claims the right to take his neighbor's stuff. He accepts the need for a wall. He just doesn't like the wall. He thinks it could be done a different way. And I agree with you. Let me suggest this way. If you have a better suggestion for how to actually enforce security on the southern border, let's just say through a combination of various techniques, you should propose it. I think, see, the problem is these topics are never debated. They're never debated. Right now, the debate is frozen between the wall or, in effect, porous borders. It's a very bad debate. We should actually be debating what is the best way to enforce security on the southern border. And I'm not dogmatic about that. I'm open to all kinds of ideas. I think Trump's point in emphasizing the wall is simply this, that for now 30 years, there are these bogus debates about fixing immigration and things like what do we do with all the illegals who are in America and so on. None of those problems can be seriously considered until a country has a real border. Now, again, you seem to agree there should be a border, there's just a better way to do it.
I don't agree with using eminent domain to take citizens' private property.
Ever?
And your analogy, and I'm not being rude, I admire what you're doing, but your analogy is flawed because the neighbor building the wall, in order for your analogy to work, the neighbor would have to step over my property line, take my property, and try to build that wall on my property. And that's what eminent domain does, is it takes private citizens' property. Now, we can argue over how secure a border needs to be and how to go about it. But when you begin the argument with we need to forcefully take somebody's stuff, that is not a good foundation to start with.
Actually, I think that makes sense. But no. Slow down. Don't start judge me yet. I think that makes sense. And for people who are live with me, I apologize for the lag. But I will post this again. I think that makes sense that he is concerned about citizens having their property taken over by the government, right? Because that's what eminent domain is. But I do understand why that property is being taken over, because that's the property where the wall needs to be. That's where they're coming over. Either there's going to be a wall, a physical wall of bricks and of brick and or wire or whatever the wall is going to be, or there's going to be a wall of people with guns trying to make sure that nobody comes over. There's going to be a wall. There's going to be something preventing people from just moseying over to the country and just saying, oh, I'm here. I'm a citizen now. Nah, they're doing something about that. So, yeah, I like the fact that Dr. DSouza said, well, if you have an issue with it, what are you providing? What plans would you have? This gentleman didn't present anything. He presented the issue, but he didn't present a plan. Most people can present an issue, but they can't present a solution for it.
Let me ask you this. In the settling of America, do you think that eminent domain should have been prohibited?
Do I think prohibited?
Yeah, you're building a railroad that's running, let's just say, from New York to California, and there's a group of people in the way who have homes and they don't want to sell, and they don't want to sell at any price. What do you think should happen?
I believe all alternatives should be considered, and if it's ruled that there's no other way to do it but that, and it's in the national security, then I'd say yes. But the problem is the argument has become more about I want a wall to feel good about seeing a wall rather than I want to make sure my border is secure.
I'm in the second camp. Okay, let's keep going.
I'm Bill Evers. I wondered if you would say something about Professor Jeffrey Hart of Dartmouth, who just died, and I believe was a mentor of yours. And I think people here, particularly students, would be interested in your experience.
Thank you, Blue Collar Henry. Okay, I appreciate that. That means a lot.
The question is about a dear and influential professor of mine, Jeff Hart, who was a deputy of Bill Buckley's at National Review. He was a very interesting character because actually in his later years he became a leftist. He became a Democrat, he became a champion of Obama, and yet he has a whole generation of Dartmouth students who are conservative, spread out in all kinds of industries that he shaped and influenced. And so it's actually been for us very sort of bittersweet to watch, you may say, the evolution of Jeffrey Hart. In his later years, I would have these knockdown debate arguments with him about Obama. He would say things like, Dinesh, you have to admit Bush was a complete idiot, and Obama is a genuine constitutional scholar. And I said, Jeff, Obama, who is a smart guy, don't get me wrong, but has never published a scholarly article on the Constitution or any other subject in any scholarly journal in his life. And he'd be like, what about the book Reading Obama by this guy Kloppenberg? I'm like, go read that book. This is an example of fake history. So this Kloppenberg is a Harvard historian. Kloppenberg will quote Obama saying things like, I'm a pragmatist. And then from that phrase, Kloppenberg goes, pragmatism, C.S. Peirce, William James, the early 20th century pragmatists debating the nature of truth. Here's Obama saying the truth itself is up for grabs. Obama's saying none of the above. He's probably never heard of Peirce. He's probably barely heard of William James. This is like the movie with Chance the Gardener.
Okay. I get a little sensitive when people start talking about President Obama. and that's only because he was a black president. That's it. Black president with a black family. That's it. Now, I don't know about policy. I don't know about whether or not he wrote anything that had to do with the Constitution or any of those things. And so I see exactly what they're saying. But I hear you. I just, when they talk about Obama, I feel some type of way. Also, someone said, Sebro, he said, can we then say the owner of that property that does not want to give their property, then secure that area of the border? What do the current owners say? You know what? I doubt. Honestly, see, bro, that was a good one. I doubt that that the owners of that property will want to do that. They will probably want to pass it over to the government and say, "That's your job. Do your job." And then when the government say, "Okay, we're going to do our job. We're going to take some of your property and we're going to build a wall," and we're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! What you doing? Don't take our property." But you said that you wasn't going to daggone secure the border, so we have to. And if somebody come through your area, can you be fined for it? That's another thing too. Like it's so many different things. This can go a crazy way if people are like throwing out all these craziness out here and they not willing to throw out any solutions.
William James, this is like the movie with Chance the Gardener. You take pedestrian statements, infuse meaning into them, and declare the guy to be the smartest guy since Oliver Wendell Holmes. I mean, this to me is intellectual sleight of hand. It's embarrassing. Now, Hart was well into his 80s when we had these debates. When I was 17 years old, I thought of conservatives as really boring people who had toothbrush mustaches and walked around with umbrellas. And I thought, mustaches. I don't want to be that. And then when I met Jeffrey Hart, this was a guy who had played in the US Open. This was a guy who was colorful, outrageous, comical, one of the few people who could make you laugh out loud, and was genuinely interested in ideas. He showed me a whole world of books and ideas I'd never heard of. I was a kid off the boat, you might say, from India, and I thought to myself, here's a whole world of knowledge, and here's a whole set of answers, and I didn't even know they were questions. So it was very important to my intellectual development to be exposed to that. And I came to understand, people said, well, Dinesh, when did you convert? When did you become a conservative? And it occurred to me I never did. It was more like I immersed myself in conservative ideas, and I recognized that I'd always been a conservative. It was more a form of awakening than it was a conversion from one thing to another. And I think this is, by the way, true of most Asian Americans. We are conservative in our bones, and conservatism is a reflection of the things we already know and the way we already live. It merely articulates those ideas.
You made the argument that Democrats are the party of racism and slavery, and I will concede that it's true that Democrats in the 1880s were Democrats that perpetuated slavery. But I need to ask, how do you think through that lens when you look at the Southern strategy and you look at the fact that it was a Democratic president who put the Civil Rights Act into law, and afterwards it was Republicans who perpetuated the Southern strategy to try to make African Americans not vote?
Good question, young man. Now, I can't wait to see how Dr. DSouza answers this. Great question. Y'all gonna be like, that wasn't no good question because his question is flawed because he did this, this, and this, and what he's saying is not true. Well, I want to hear it.
The question is about the fact that, yes, the Democrats may be the party of slavery and racism. I think you then said something that was unfair, which is you said, I'll grant you in the 1880s. Let's remember that the Ku Klux Klan was revived in the early 20th century. The lynchings and hangings that we identify with the Klan all occurred, a lot of them occurred in the teens and 20s. And the opposition to the civil rights was in the 60s. Now, with the solitary exception of, yes, Lyndon Johnson pushed the Civil Rights Act. True. And this is a longer story which I won't be able to do justice to here, but why did he do it? Why did he do it? My argument is the following. After World War II, the horrific evidence of the concentration camps and the racism of Hitler began to have a powerful effect worldwide. It drove anti-colonialism in the Third World, but it also drove a diminution of racism in the American South. Racism was dropping rapidly in the American South after 1945. Now, you have to realize this was a huge problem for the Democratic Party because after the Civil War, the glue holding the Democratic Party together in the South was, in fact, white supremacy.
Wow.
And so for Lyndon Johnson, it's...
The glue holding it together was white supremacy. Wow. I can see that. I can see that. I can see that. Free labor, big money, everything's still going the way that you wanted to go. You can be as evil as you want to be. Okay, I can see that.
In the South was, in fact, white supremacy. And so for Lyndon Johnson, it's like, now what? We're actually losing our base. The key to Nixon's Southern strategy was to appeal to the non-racist whites in the urban South. Read about it, because this Southern strategy that you're describing is a myth. The actual Southern strategy was really simple. Many people in the South are moving away from, the South is changing from an agricultural society to an industrial society. Many Northerners are moving south to places like Tampa and Atlanta and Raleigh-Durham and Houston. And Nixon's strategy was, I'm not campaigning in the rural South. That's racist country. I'm going to leave that to the Democrats. I'm going to campaign in the urban South and win the the displaced Northerners and the non-racist Southerners. That was Nixon's Southern strategy. And the proof? Just go look at what Nixon actually won. He won the urban South. He lost the Deep South. In 1968, the Deep South went for George Wallace, not Richard Nixon.
How does this dude know all of this right off the cuff? He don't have to look at anything, like he knows right. How do you know exactly what he won, what part of the country he won, and those type of things, like that quick? This guy he's sharp, man. He's sharp. And for these youngers to stand up and ask a question to him and be so sure of themselves that he's going to stumble or they're going to be able to get him, like I'm going to ask him a gotcha question. Nope. Never, man. This dude, he's sharp.
He lost the Deep South. In 1968, the Deep South went for George Wallace, not Richard Nixon. And so what we're dealing with here is an argument about history, but an argument that's very important because of the claim of the party switch, which I deny.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Love y'all, man. All right. Bye.